where are you guys at on this G5 lawsuit thing? Because I am probably, and I know this is going to be shocking, I am probably going to sound like an a-hole. I know, right? Way off brand. The G5 are now pushing back and complaining about the fact that they will have to pay a significant share of the NCAA settlements in these NIL lawsuits, specifically the House versus NCAA lawsuit, which I would expect to be announced in a matter of days. The G5 says they don't believe that they should have to pay the amount that they're being asked to pay or any at all. And I just don't see the logic in this. Now, listen, we're going to show you some screenshots of comments, but just ask yourself this question. Is Alabama and UNLV on the same level? They very clearly are not. But does that mean that UNLV or any other G5 team, does that mean that they should not have a seat at the table? Does this mean that UConn, does this mean that Gonzaga should not have to contribute? That the Big East and the WCC should not have to pay their fair share of the freight in these NIL lawsuits? I'm sorry, I just don't see it. You have shared in the revenue. You have shared in the riches that come with the NCAA tournament in college football. But now that it's time to, share in the settlement where you have to pay your fair share, you don't want to do that because you don't have a seat at the table and you believe you're being railroaded. Jake, I just don't see it, and I do believe that the G5 should have to pay their fair share.
Yeah, the tough part of the conversation is not whether or not the G5 should have to pay their fair share. I think the tough part of the conversation is that when you start looking at opportunity that the G5 doesn't have, that's when I think things get difficult. Now, obviously, and we're about to show it to you as we get into the conversation, but there's a formula that basically stipulates, hey, the power conferences pay this level based on percentage, the G5s pay this level based on percentage. And my biggest thing here is that I don't think it's unreasonable for the G5 to make the case that, yeah, we're not the ones making college football playoff revenue every single year. We're not the ones that really have that type of access. Now, on paper, do they have a seat at the table? Sure. On paper, yeah, they have a seat at the table. But we all know damn well that UNLV is never going to get into the college football playoff. We all know that 9 days out of 10 with one-offs occasionally from the G5, that they're never going to see that top end, cherry on top revenue that we all know makes a difference for these schools. And so it's not whether or not the G5 are going to pay their fair share, because they are going to pay their fair share. There's no getting away from it. You're not escaping. But I do think this furthers the conversation around, hey, the G5 need their own system. Like, we can't have a situation where, in your example, UNLV is on the hook for the same percentage of their revenue that the power conferences are, right? So we shouldn't be saying, hey, the power conferences are paying 10% and the G5s are paying 10%.
Right.
That's not at all on any level proper.
But I don't think anybody is saying that. And I think you look at this anonymous quote to ESPN on the screen, talking about how we're just being told what our taxation is. Well, why weren't you asking these questions when you collected your tournament shares then? I've never understood this about, those that cry poor when there's a lot of money available. But then when the cost of that money comes to fruition, they're like, oh, we can't afford that. Well, you're either in or you're out. And you're constant bitching and moaning about access. Well, you have access. You've had access, whether that be the BCS, whatever the championship levels are. You've had access. Where's San Diego State calling for their pro rata? Well, they had access to play for a national championship. Yet now, when you're being asked to pay your fair share, you don't want to do that. I have a real problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's an issue here at hand where it's like, the San Diego States of the world who have done really well in the tournament. Yeah, you can't cry poor here, right? And again, this is kind of my point with this is like we have a problem here where you have San Diego State who's having a bunch of success in the tournament and makes the money, and you don't really hear themselves complaining about this per se. But you do have Val Ackerman, the commissioner of the Big East, who's in the Big East, UConn, complaining that, hey, we shouldn't have to pay our fair share. And so the problem I have is that this is a conference level situation, not a school level situation. And I feel like the G5 just kind of have to deal with that, as unfair as that is.
Yeah, I just don't have I don't have a problem with the G5 having to pay. And here's Val Ackerman. I would love to tell you that she's right. She's not right. And you look at the fact that the Big East will be responsible for $5 million to $7 million a year, as much as $70 million over a decade. It is what it is. $600,000 to $700,000 a school. It is what it is. This is the price you pay for the greed that you have displayed for decades, for generations. How are we this short-sighted, right? I look at the fact that people want to use this argument right here on the screen. Well, the Big East doesn't get what the SEC and the Big Ten get. Okay, show me how that's justified for you to get what the SEC and the Big Ten get.
Well, and I think that is the crux of the conversation right there. So again, the Big East, right? Not having football and being access to the college football playoff is both a hindrance to them, but it's a hindrance and the reality of their situation, right? So like your conference shouldn't get a free pass per se, because you're not putting the resources in that the SEC and the Big Ten and all these folks are putting in. But I just think that this is the classic, hey, how do you look at this situation? On one hand, you can say, hey, you're not putting in as much as the SEC and the Big Ten and the power conferences are, right? So you're not going to pay as much dollar for dollar, right? Like obviously we just looked at, hey, G5s are responsible for $5-7 million a year. And you've got the power conferences that are responsible for significantly more than that. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but significantly more than that, obviously. And I think it's difficult because, again, we can't be lumping in tiny school with juggernaut school in trying to compare dollar for dollar. That does not work anymore.
Yeah, and you look at Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, on X, which is now X.com. It's no longer Twitter.com.
Congrats, Elon. Thanks for ruining it.
Over the 10-year payback period, total NCAA distribution will be reduced by 21%. In all, schools are responsible for $1.6 to $1.7 billion in damages. The P5 are paying $1.1 billion. The G5, $450 million. Everybody else, $100 million. Okay, cool. Let's all go about our business.
Yeah, right there. That split seems pretty reasonable on paper, right? Hey, the power conferences are over $1 billion. The G5s are short of $500 million. Like, okay, that seems pretty reasonable on paper. But then we get down to the nitty gritty and folks like Val Ackerman complaining. And it's like, well, again, this is the point I made about, Calford, right? If you're not going to if you're going to be involved in athletics, but you're not going to be involved in winning in athletics, you can't really complain when bad things happen. Like you can't have it both ways. And I think that's what's difficult is like, not everybody should be doing athletics. And this is what we've been saying for how long now? Like just because you have a college doesn't mean you have to have athletics. Because again, what you have to remember, the big circle, the big red Sharpie circle around this whole conversation is athletics is one line item on the entire P&L sheet for a university. So this is not just like hey, this burning down schools. This is one area.
Then don't take tournament shares for UConn.
Right, exactly.
For Creighton.
Exactly, yeah.
For Marquette.
But they are. And so it's like, hey, that's why I was surprised that Val Ackerman is complaining about this. Now, if I don't know, the Mountain West or the American or, like a different conference
Big
that
Sky.
maybe the Big Sky, isn't as prolific in athletics. Okay. Yeah, I get it. You're not having some huge, a contribution in the tournament.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not getting college football playoff shares. Okay, I understand. You're crying poor because, frankly, with all due respect, you are poor. I get it. It's cool. So I I understand on some level where Val's coming from. She's basically saying, "Hey, look, man, we didn't create this NIL beast. We didn't like we were not in control of how the power conferences tried to go out and pay for talent, but we're just here paying the price." That's essentially Val's argument. And while there is some truth in that, in my opinion, frankly, there is some truth in that. You can't tell me UConn's not out here using NIL over the last 5 years to get players. You can't tell me that, schools in your conference are not using the system.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks if you're a G5 with a smaller budget. It sucks. It sucks if you're a P5 and you're Washington State. If you're Oregon State as
Yeah.
well. I mean, it sucks if you're Stanford and Cal. It sucks if you're UCLA. It probably sucks more if you're UConn. It probably sucks more if you're in the WCC and you're St. Mary's and you're having to pay your fair share of this settlement. That sucks. That sucks. And I don't know how you fix it.
But notice who's not complaining. We're not hearing complaints from Gonzaga. We're not hearing complaints from folks who are in the mess every single year athletically. We're not hearing from people who are getting the distributions, and we're not hearing from those people for obvious reasons. They are simply saying, and this has always been my philosophy, both in sports and in life, especially at the college level. If you're going to be involved in sports, you need to win because you have to have money to do anything in college athletics.
And how many of these universities have a rainy day fund? Because it's pouring rain.
Come on, dude.
And this is where this comes down to. I just don't.
But I do think this conversation, this situation is one of those situations that pushes forward the conversation about, hey, we got to have a system for the G5 and below and a system for the power conferences. This nonsense about how we're commingling everything together and these lawsuits are applied to basically everybody in under NCAA membership equally. It was so funny. I heard over the weekend someone asked me, well, they made a side comment. Well, the NCAA might go away. And I said, hey, listen, the NCAA is not going anywhere because the NCAA is comprised of all these schools. So the reality is that somebody in the room, whether that's Greg Sankey, Charlie Baker, whoever the hell it's going to be, has to step up and say, hey, we got to put the G5 in a better spot. And the only way to do that is to give them their own level to play at.
Yeah, you get what you've earned in this world. I'm a little worn out. I view this very much like the law does not apply to me because I don't like the law. The rules apply to the G5 the same way they do to the P4, right? This is the NCAA, and I'll go back to what I've said about these lawsuits from the jump. Is Val Ackerman in the Big East and all of her constituents, are they members of the NCAA?
Yep.
Okay, done. End of story.
Yeah, and
you're an NCAA member. You've got to pay the freight.
Yeah, and while that sucks, that's the reality. And by the way, again, and I think we talked about this on the show quite a bit, whether it was the Pac-12 situation or any of the other things any of the other situations we've discussed. You have to have foresight about what's coming.
Correct.
So we have this Pete Thamel's story over the weekend. He references a source from, I believe it was Division II or whatever, a smaller school source talking about the fact that, they make these backhanded comments about how, did we have any involvement in paying Zion Williamson all this NIL money, which I love that attitude about it. The assertion that that is what this is about is totally off base, 100% off base.
Yeah, and this idea, the idea that this is a football problem. Ed O'Bannon didn't play football; he played basketball. And Ed O'Bannon wanted to be paid. There's a lot of these examples. This is not a football problem. This did not start with football. This started with college sports on the whole. And I think you can make the argument that the like the lack of ability to get paid as a professional skier means you're ineligible to play football, Jeremy Bloom. Or, there's examples throughout history where this is not a football only issue. And it didn't start with football. And I love all these basketball folks in the WCC or the Big East, Val Ackerman, talking about how it's not a football problem, Val. It just isn't. And it sucks. You don't have to like it, but you're in the system that you created. You had a hand in creating all this. It wears me out when we're like, oh, well, I don't like it, so I don't have to do it. Yeah, you do. I don't like working out, but I have to do it.
I mean, I almost am at a point with this stance of like, again, I understand, the argument they're trying to make. That doesn't make it a good argument. I understand the argument you're trying to make, but I don't blame them for trying to make the argument. Like, if I was in Val Ackerman's shoes on some level, like if you're a G5, and the Big East is a bad example because they compete in basketball. So Val looks kind of silly out here trying to argue this point because you're getting money from the tournament.
And a lot of it.
Yeah. So there's really no reason for you to be the one complaining. But like I said earlier, like I understand that at the G5 level, anytime the big boys or the NCAA says, hey, we're going to reach into your pocket and we're going to start taking money from you to pay for whatever this thing is, in this case, NIL lawsuits. Yeah, I understand why the G5 is going to cry poor and try to work that angle, because what else do they have to work? They don't have anything else to work with. And again, that's why I keep bringing it up, and I don't mean to be repetitive, but this whole situation around, like, we're literally comparing apples and oranges when we look at athletic budgets here, man. We're not like, and this is why the Ross Dellinger tweet about, the P5 or the P4s being responsible for over $1 billion is cool. It's fitting, but Val's argument is, hey, on scale, we're still overpaying. That's why she was very tactical, I might point out, in saying disproportionate to what we should be paying. And I just think it's a struggle because you're right. And I agree with you. Hey, you're an NCAA member. You knew what you signed up for. It's not a secret. Like, this is your responsibility. You have to do this.
Your biggest brands don't make football money.
Yeah.
It's what it comes down to, because you look at like the American, or like you look at revenue numbers. The Big East reported $88 million in revenue in 21-22. That according to IRS tax documents. Well below the lowest Power 5 conference, the Big 12, at $481 million. It trailed the American at $183 million. And they came in ahead of the Mountain West at $79 million.
So let's go back to the screenshot. What are the G5s responsible for? The Big East pulled in $88 million on tax documents. Ross Dellinger, hey, the G5 as a whole is responsible for $450 million. And at a conference level individually, it's $5 to $7 million a year, which works out to $600,000 or $700,000 a school per year in your conference. So you're really telling me, and again, this is the hard part for Val to get away from. You're telling me that $600,000 or $700,000, you can't handle that hit out of $88 million?
Yeah, it's tough. And I don't even argue that $500,000 to UConn's a lot of money. Maybe if your maybe if your football program wasn't embarrassing, this wouldn't be the issue. Marquette, who doesn't play football, different conversation. Gonzaga, St. Mary's, different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But my point in all of this is, again, where were you 5 years ago before all this happened? Where were you complaining about the disproportionate revenue? Why didn't you hire Brett Yormark to create new revenue streams in your conference? you can't be a victim all the time. And this is in your life. This is Val Ackerman. You can't constantly play the victim card.
Mhm.
We're not making enough money. We deserve more money. We shouldn't have to pay as much money. Do something about it. Do something about it. Go make more money.
Yeah, I mean, UConn's football stadium situation might be the most, might be the best example of this. Like the idea that UConn and frankly the Big East haven't done anything about that stadium situation is crazy because a football stadium to a school and to a conference is nothing more than an ATM machine. It should quite literally be a building that you front load with revenue to build, obviously. And then over the next 10 years, you should be able to be profiting on that structure. What, after 3 seasons?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, if you're good in football. And this is why I say, like, well, you guys remember when we were talking about Stanford? The point I always made about Stanford was they don't care if they win or lose because they don't have to care. They've got endowments. They've got money. Like they've got more money than anybody even needs to talk about. So they don't have to care about how good Stanford is or is not on the football field because they're set. But schools like UConn, the power, or not the power, the group of 5 school that does have a football team, but is trash on the football field. And, the Hurley brothers decide they want to go out and put a good basketball court on, or a good basketball team on the court.
Yeah.
Like you start to see like, hey, we're good here, but we have a weakness here and we're not thinking about 5 years ago. What happens if a suit comes down? What happens if a rainy day happens? What happens if we all of a sudden get our legs chopped out for, $700,000 a year and we can't afford that? What are we going to do?
I think it's a very interesting thing.
Has nobody thought of that?
I think people have thought of that. And I looking at some of these numbers, like, again, I just go back to Ross's thing. You look at the P5, the G5, and D1 FCS, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think it is on scale. If you were asking the G5 to pay 50%, I would be a little concerned about that. You're not.
Yeah, that's under 50%. That's
You're
like,
not.
What is that, 42% or something like that?
If you were asking the lower levels to pay half, you're not. Anyway, enough of me. More of you. These things always annoy the hell out of me. They really do. They really, really do. Let's see. I would also like to point out that I'm not saying because before small school guy gets a boner in the comments section.
Well, Monty, you hate the G5. You're an asshole, man.
I'm not saying that because I think in some circles in corners of this world they are. But it's up to the G5 to do everything that they can do to make more money. That's what this is across the board. Make more money. It is as simple as life has ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Can't afford your mortgage? Pick up the phone and start dialing.
Seriously.
It's that simple. All right. The comment section, as usual, is brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks, prizepicks.com. Yeah, Chaboy won $300 over the weekend on Prize Picks.
Okay.
Shut up, Jake.
Cooking?
Well, I was cooking. Correct. I would like to thank Xander Schauffele. I would like to thank, if my app would load.
Thank you.
I would love to tell you.
Okay.
I would like to thank John Rahm for actually showing up. We show up.
Yeah, Liv guys had a nice little weekend here.
And Bryson DeChambeau yesterday really came through for me.
Yeah, good job losing, dude. Nice
job. Good job losing. But he played well and he came through. He made me money. Prize Picks, prizepicks.com. It is very simple. Daily fantasy at its finest. All you have to do is you take a number. Right now, baseball, I think, is amazing. The NBA playoffs. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Oh, wait, OKC sucks. They're out. Jalen Brunson. Oh, wait, everybody on the Knicks is injured and Tom Thibodeau's getting a free pass. They're out. Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert.
2.5 blocks in a game, more or less.
More.
So is he going to have 2 or is he going to have 3? I'll take more because I think he's going to have 3. Done. It's that simple on Prize Picks. It's more or less. Make your pick. Use the promo code Monty. You get 100% deposit matching up to $100. PrizePicks.com, the official daily fantasy partner of the Monty program.
And by the way, I might add, they've got a lot of different sports under the Prize Picks. On
Prize Picks. Now they're a bunch of pricks at Prize Picks.
My bad.
Now they're a bunch of pricks at Prize Picks.
You know, you've got the Call of Duty sections. You've got. I do love me some NFL season Prize Picks. So you can pick, like, as an example, will Patrick Mahomes throw for more than 4,350.5 yards?
No.
So you can do on the season. We've got tennis. We've got soccer, NHL. NHL is fun.
It's football, please.
Yeah, NHL is a lot of fun.
It's football. There you have it. Prize Picks
tonight. Perfect example in the NHL.
Jake's going to keep going.
Evander Kane for 1 point.
I thought Evander Holyfield was a boxer.
Evander Kane, not Holyfield. Kane.
Right, Evander Holyfield.
Right. Okay.
Is a hockey player now.
Okay, good talk. All right.
Who else
for NHL?
Yeah, who else you like?
Chris Kreider. On a demon for 1 point.
Chris Kreider.
Yeah, the Rangers. I'm going to go ahead and take that.
I know who Chris Kreider is.
There's some guy named Connor McDavid, more than 3.5 shots on goal. I don't know if he's any good.
Game 7. It's Game 7. Canucks and Oilers tonight.
Gotta go ahead and take more.
It's all that matters. All that matters is Canucks and Oilers tonight. I need my guy Leon, and I need my guy McDeasy to come through.
Yeah, I'm going all Edmonton on this Prize Picks right here.
You're going all Edmonton.
Connor McDavid, more than 3.5 shots tonight.
Okay, that's easy.
Leon Draisaitl, more than 22 minutes on the ice.
It's my guy.
Which should be pretty easy. And Evander Kane for 1 point tonight.
Evander Kane.
Yes. And he's had a point in every game of this series.
Okay, I like it. Real quick.
Yeah.
What the hell is Dota 2? I don't know what DOTA 2 is.
Let me do
That's in Prize Picks.
Let me do a quick Google search here, man.
6R6 is, they even have esports. Call of Duty. I said duty, which I like a lot. So, bet, anyway, you can bet your sweet ass Jake will lose tonight. Go opposite